How to work for a bad boss.
That's how to work for a bad boss. Are you working for a bad? I'm kidding. Do not. No, both of us wonderful bosses. We are wonderful bosses and have wonderful bosses, right?
The best, really, actually. No one's been greater.
Yes. All right. I think it's an excellent topic. All right. So occasionally in life, let's just say some people have a less than optimum boss.
Not the ideal leadership role.
No. And honestly, that can make or break an entire job.
Absolutely.
That one little thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. I think this is a good topic to discuss for a lot of people because a lot of people find themselves in a situation where they're in a position for their employment that they like, but the individual who is directly over top of them is not ideal.
So I think there's a couple different roads we can go on with this. One is, do you like the job and you have a bad boss? Or do you hate the job and you have a bad boss? Or why is the boss bad? Might be the better initial direction. Or like how? Because sometimes it's personality. Okay. If you and your boss clash on personality, that's usually where you'll make some offhanded comment about him, like, oh, Jim. I'm sorry, Jim's gonna be the boss today.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Good old Jim.
Yeah, Jim's just mean. All right, he's a jerk.
Yep.
All right. Well, why is Jim a jerk? Is it his style, and you're too sensitive? I'd say that's probably 15 to 20%.
It's a real possibility.
Yeah, those ones. You gotta learn to deal with that. But then the one right above that is, okay, let's say he's a little aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far, but he's just his verbiage could use a tweak.
Yeah.
How would you deal with a boss whose verbiage just needs a little tweak?
Yeah, he needs some more sensitive communication skills.
Sure.
Yep. And then obviously you got the last resort, which is just they're a huge pain. Mm-hmm. They're almost purposely or even are purposely difficult to work with. They just impossible to get along with. And passive aggressive, the whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I think also you have to factor in not only how much do you like the job, how difficult is your boss to work for, but also how lucrative is the position that you're in.
So like
because,
how much is it just price of entry?
Yeah, because it's almost like a threefold thing. Because like if you got all three against you, if you don't like the job, your boss sucks, and you're not making good money, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Like, just leave. Just quit your job at that point. And then you got the multiple combinations of you don't like the job, your boss sucks, but the pay is good.
Mm-hmm.
Or you do like the job, your boss sucks, and the pay isn't so great, but you like what you do. Or you like what you do, you get paid good, but your boss is a real jerk.
The tic-tac-toe diagram that we just made out here.
There's a lot of options.
Yes. Let's hit a couple of these different ways here. And I think we got a little dial in to what kind of not good the boss is. So, for example,
absolutely.
If it's just the tone, okay. Sometimes it's a suck it up, buttercup. All right, you're going to be okay. Now, what if it's disrespect? Okay, this is now the next level here. Mm-hmm. Your boss, examples are almost always good here, in front of your group in a meeting, says something shoddy about your work in a non-joking fashion.
Yep.
Like an absolute public disrespect toward you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First, let's deal with what to do in that situation.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So, having this situation, I would say, in the moment is probably not the time to handle it. If it's the first time.
Yeah.
The first time, maybe for one moment, swallow your pride. Think, okay, What this just came out of the blue. He's never been like this before, and he just said that to me publicly.
Yeah.
At that point, after the meeting, hey Jim, can we talk? Give him a chance to make it right.
Yeah.
I say that.
And analyze, the conversation. Maybe it was misinterpreted, misspoke, or directly intentional. Like that also plays a factor there. If it's directly intentional, like you said, you definitely want to bring it up. Don't just ignore it. But if it could have been interpreted differently, I wouldn't jump to conclusions. But then also, if it's a repetitive situation, then you still want to bring it up.
Absolutely. So you're going to see real quick, we have one general answer for all of this, which is very much open communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You have to be able to go talk to your boss. So if your boss is a jerk, you sometimes just got to say, hey, boss, I know you're just trying to do your job. I don't respond well to that. I need you to coach me a little different. That's sometimes, and you gotta know yourself enough, be self-assured enough to actually say that. That's huge.
Yes, especially because if you don't like your boss, or even if you don't necessarily not like them, if you're not getting along with them well, communication is very difficult. Nobody wants to have communication with someone who's they're not getting along with. It's not an enjoyable experience, and you just don't want to do it. And that makes it so much easier to just ignore it, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. And, it's easy for us to say, have communication with your boss. Well, what does that look like? It doesn't have to be as formal as you go have a sit-down meeting with your boss, and you're like, hey, you said this one thing that's offensive to me, blah, 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 this. It can be as simple as finding the right moment to mention the correct thing, to try to start that thought process of them understanding that the way that you're thinking about a certain topic or comment or whatever. Like you said earlier, if they make a comment and then later on you maybe bring it up, but I don't think it has to be as direct and official as like calling a meeting with them. Maybe if it comes up a second time, you can make mention of that time and the previous time at the same time while saying something about how you're like, in the past, you don't like comments like that, or you don't handle comments like that well, or something. But I don't think at first it needs to be direct confrontation.
Sure. Maybe the round one, that's just a grace. That's a mulligan. You kind of just like, oh, okay, something was off.
Yeah.
All right, fine. Let's just move on to the next one. But yeah, on that second one though, that's the beginning of an established pattern. You have to address it, not just for you, not just for them, but for you too. You have to know the expectations of your job. Now I'll say also it could be their management style can make you not like them. There was a season of my life where my production was not where it needs to be. And so I was on a specific team, and they were, I would call it, micromanaged. I do not operate very well being micromanaged. I understand there's a season where it is acceptable, usually right at the beginning, where it's like, hey, I'm going to be all over you right now because we need to hit these metrics. I need to know you can do your job with full greatness, and then I'm going to take my hands off. There's a season of that, but when that's all the time, that would just drive me crazy. Then at that point, I think my boss is a jerk.
Yeah, and I think up until this point, we've been talking with the assumption that your boss had animosity or intentional issue with you. But I think it's important for us to take a moment to go, you really probably should analyze that situation before you make the assumption that they are intentionally disrespectful or are communicating in a way that you don't appreciate. Because it may not be that they're just a jerk, but I think you've got, one, if you don't like them as an individual, it's really easy to perceive their communication as less than ideal just because as a person you don't really like them.
Yeah, you're not giving them the real opportunity to say anything unless it's absolute perfect. There's a Key and Peele skit where he's texting with his buddy, and his buddy's reading every single text in the worst way possible, and he's typing like, "Oh, what a great guy," and he's reading the opposite. Well, this guy's a jerk, and he's ready to fight. How we believe our boss is speaking to us may or may not always be accurate.
Yeah, I think it's important that you make sure that your personal opinion of the individual isn't skewing your analysis of their communication. Another thing would be, too, your opinion on the position in general. If you don't like your job, it's really easy for them to seem like they're being a jerk to you when they might just be asking you to do your job. And you don't want to do your job because you don't like your job. Or they're asking you to do a difficult part of your job. Or calling you out for not doing a difficult part of your job. Those are all items where they can definitely come across as your boss being a jerk or difficult to get along with or whatever. But in reality, they're just doing their job, which is to manage you, and you're not appreciating it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the time to go to them and say, you're not communicating effectively, because your own bias is causing the skew in perspective.
I think that's very good, because if you don't want to actually do your job, no manager is really going to be able to help you, good or bad. Because if you don't like your job, you don't want to do your job, this isn't the place for you. You're not going to take coaching, you're not going to take criticism. And then it's really hard, like you said, to determine whether or not they're being a jerk or whether they're holding you to a standard.
Right.
That I didn't see that being the direction we went here, but that's a really, really solid point there.
Yeah, and I would say more often than not, it's probably a combination of you're maybe having a part of your job that you don't like, you're maybe not particularly fond of your boss, and maybe they're not particularly fond of you, so their communication isn't top notch, but it's also not like purposefully harmful or disrespectful, but yet your perspective of the situation and the individual, you take it as such, and it kind of domino effects from there.
So we, in this particular example, we were using the boss, generally speaking, was a good guy, and he wasn't communicating effectively, and or he was holding you to a standard. Let's go the opposite direction.
Yep.
Let's say we actually have a real bad boss.
Yep.
Let's play those scenarios next.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of this, your reaction here can, not necessarily should, but can dictate your response here based on your opinion of the situation. So if you don't like your job versus if you do like your job, compared to both situations of your boss is not only not a great individual, but they're also intentionally unlikable to you. They're rude, disrespectful, they give you an unfair share of the workload, they make you do an unfair share of the unliked workload. Those type of situations, how do you deal with that individual, both when you like your job, but also when you don't like your job?
So I'm going to start with when you like your job, sometimes it is just par for the course, unfortunately.
Yep.
But only for a short season. Also, I think it's very, very important, if you like your job, one thing you'll know is you know what your job is. So let's say my job is to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm being asked to do something outside of my role. At that point, you're an employee, you say, hey, this is the contract I signed. I mean, we all sign employment contracts. Nobody reads them.
Yeah, no.
But we are supposed to do what's inside our job. Anything above and beyond that is very kind. To be nice. You know, maybe going for a promotion, maybe trying to get some eyes on you. But really, they can own the true standard they hold you to is what was on that document.
Yep.
And so you got to stand up for yourself a bit. If you're being asked to do something outside of that, either through malice or intent or just trying to just get rid of you, no, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do, and I take pride in my work. So I'm focusing here. If you want to renegotiate and put that other stuff here, okay, we're happy to talk.
Yep.
But standing up for yourself and knowing what is your job is very important.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is critical, knowing what is your job and what your role is. Because there's a lot of positions out there, even if you sign a contract, an employment contract for a position, it can still be very vague. And like what your role is can be ambiguous. So starting there, knowing what your job is. Number 2 would be letting it go is never going to turn out good for you. Because it seems easy to just start with, oh, you know what, he's asking me to do this thing. Linda and Brian over here don't have to do it, but I do. Or he's asking me to do it, so you know what it is, I'll just do it. That's never, ever going to play out well. It's not just going to go away. It's not just going to be a one-time thing. That if you truly believe that your boss is intentionally asking you to go above and beyond because he doesn't like you or there's some, butting heads in that relationship, once that starts, if you don't stand up for yourself and say, look, this isn't fair and, you're asking me to go above and beyond, however that looks, whether it's an HR department, their boss, directly with them, whatever, it's just going to get worse and worse. And especially if you care about your job and you want to stay there, I think it's important that you address it and don't just let it go.
Exactly. As soon as that first one, as soon as it bugs you, and I don't mean for 10 seconds, like, check yourself first, then you realize, oh no, this is a pattern. I am being asked to do things the others are not, even though it's all of our jobs or it's none of your jobs.
Right.
So this is super silly. If you're in an office environment and you do not have a secretary on staff, maybe you work for a small company, whose job is it to pick up the phone?
Yep, absolutely.
It's everybody's job, and at the same time, it's nobody's job.
Yep.
So this is where some of the ambiguity, the vagueness of our contracts really can come to bite people, because the boss could be saying, I have 5 people working here and no one can pick up the phone.
Right.
Well, it's none of our jobs, but at the same time, it's all of our jobs. It's that lack of clarity of expectation.
Yeah, and I think in our topic of conversation today, a good example of that would be then your boss getting on you for not picking up the phone, but then never saying anything to the individuals that he gets along with. So, and in that case, that would, I think, would tie back to what you just said earlier, which is that would just be par for the course. Yes, it's technically your job, and that may just be an item that you have to deal with and get over. Picking up the phone is part of your job. Yes, it's not fair that you're held to a higher standard than the other individuals are. And yes, you should definitely still address it with your boss. But if you're getting nowhere, sometimes there's just difficulties in work that you have to work through. And that might be one of them. Now, the alternative to that, let's take it aside from a office standpoint and let's go to another field. If you say you work in, a blue collar industry and you've got some other peers that you're working with and you consistently keep getting the really undesirable jobs, say you're a plumber and you got to do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. Or anything along there, in any sort of position in which you keep getting handed the undesirable tasks. And they start to fall outside of what would be considered your role, but your role's ambiguous to an extent. It's just kind of do what you're told. What do you do in that situation?
I think the first time I would view that as a test. The second, third, fourth time, that point you gotta you got to talk to the boss. Like, hey, I'm trying to do a good job. Now, take note. You have to actually be trying to do your job properly.
Mm-hmm.
In the goofy phone call example, the guy who's the best on the phones could be just because he answered the phone more than you.
Yeah.
The plumber who has all this weird, bizarro knowledge could have been because when he got in the industry, his boss didn't like him, so sent him to all the weird calls.
Right.
That you can spin a lot of these weird things to your benefit with the right attitude.
Yep.
Now, that is all it's relatively short term.
Yep.
Because it's not sustainable long term. Now, I am also of the belief that anyone who does their job at an excellent level long enough, I can't put a date on there, long enough will serve someone else. You will either be moved up, be moved around. They may tank you from that position, but that's okay because you knew there was another thing coming out for you.
Yeah. And like you said, if you're in this position in which your immediate boss is very difficult to work with, they're purposefully decisive, malicious, whatever, you're being asked to go above and beyond outside of your role, you've talked to them directly, you're not getting anywhere. If you then take it to the next step, which would be going to their superior, and in most situations, that's probably going to be either like a high-level management or an owner of a company.
Yes.
If you take it to that level and then nothing changes, you really have to decide if that's a company you want to work for.
Correct.
Because an issue with a direct boss is one thing, but an issue over multiple layers of management means it's not just a single person. And if that's the case, then I would strongly suggest you really review whether that's a company that you want to stay with.
And same thing goes if you're in a corporate position. Sometimes you don't have as much an option to go to your boss's boss.
Mm-hmm.
If any corporate training, they say if you have any problems, go to HR.
Right.
And you file an HR report. They do an investigation. Blah blah blah. If it doesn't go the way that it needs to go, then the same exact thing applies. You need to personally review.
Mm-hmm.
Is this where I want to be?
Yeah, and I think it's as simple as write a list of pros and cons if you have to go that simple of just is this a place that you want to work for? You know, if it's an example of, yeah, they're just making me do XYZ thing and it's annoying and I shouldn't have to do it, but I make a lot of money, you know, that's a choice you got to make. If it's this is really burdensome, it's really unfair, I'm really starting to feel, you know, a negative work environment, and it's really not proving to be worth my time here, then you have to make that decision based on you and your current situation, and not let the process of finding another job intimidate you from doing what's best for you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean because your boss asks you to do something inconvenient that you just throw your hands up and quit. Because I know there's people out there that are just like, yeah, my boss asked me to clean the trash can out that's full of my trash. I'm not working here anymore.
Not from my office.
Yeah, like...
Now, none of this is to say if there's any actual abuse, workplace abuse, different story, immediately go to a higher up or get out of there. Right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a completely different topic.
Yeah,
we'll make a note to say that's not what we're talking about in this video. And
no. This is, I don't like my boss.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in a high sales environment, you're not going to like your boss at times because he's going to like push you to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes pushing someone to be the best in any field, that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it sounds simple, but regardless of the situation, communication is always the answer, I think. I don't think you can convince me that there's a situation in a professional environment where communication makes things worse. Like true positive communication. Because the worst case scenario is you have open positive communication and nothing happens or it gets worse. In which that case, that's a telling sign of it's probably not an environment you want to stay in. Mm-hmm. Or it gets better. Either way, it's getting you an answer and it's moving things in the right direction. Open, positive communication. I think that's going to always be your answer, regardless of the situation. Regardless if it's your boss's fault, the work environment's fault, you're just lazy, whatever. That's, I think, your answer regardless of where you're going.
Mm-hmm. And just because I know there's someone watching and they're going to say, but I'm in that place now. I need to leave, but I can't for XYZ reason. Don't worry, we're working on that video. It's very much a work in progress. We're getting there. But yeah, you have to know, is this a bad communication issue? Mm-hmm. Or is it something else? But if it's just a communication issue, well, put some time in. He's being paid money. You're being paid money.
Right.
The people above both of you guys like you to get along. Mm-hmm. Because no one wants to go spend 40 plus hours a week hanging out with people they don't like, who are mean to them. That's not fun for either person.
Right.
You want to spend a lot of time with these people. You got to get along with your boss. Otherwise, you got to. No. Just get along. Find a way.
And maybe it might be the case of you just have to make the first step in trying to repair that relationship.
Yes, maybe something's genuinely happened in the past. Maybe he heard you talking about him at the water cooler, and now he thinks you're a jerk.
Yeah, if say things got off on the wrong foot, and maybe you technically shouldn't have to, but it could be as simple as you just taking the initiative to try to, say, hey, sorry about XYZ thing, try to get things back on the right foot. This by no means is just a open ticket for you to just quit your job because you don't like it or you don't like your boss. That's not at all what this is. It's if your boss is intentionally difficult or malicious, this is how you should handle it. But if that's not the case, you really need to take time to analyze the situation. Because as we've talked, there's multiple different ways that this can go and different situations, and you have to make sure that your perceptive is not skewing your mentality.
Yes. Because it might be a them problem, but I've often found most times it's a me problem.
Or a both problem.
Ooh. Yeah, but I can't change them, but I can change me.
Yeah.
But yes.
But you want to blame them, but you don't want to blame me. I think if I had to guess, that's probably most cases. Mm-hmm. It started off wrong or eventually started to go wrong, and neither one of them wanted to take initiative, and it just kept getting worse, and both parties are at fault. That's probably more often than not the situation. And so you just avoid each other, or one person ends up getting a different position or whatever. But I think that's probably more often than not.
Yeah. Someone needs to be the bigger person here, and it ain't going to be me.
Exactly. And it may be the case that you have to swallow your pride and be the bigger person.
Yep.
Could be a situation of your boss just has a very different personality than you're used to, and you have to adapt to that. But at the end of the day, it's critical that you make the best decisions for you and your career, but at the same time, you have to be sure that you're accurately assessing the situation and making sure that A, you're not part of the problem, and B, you're doing your due diligence to correct the situation, even if it may not be your. But at the end of the day, if you do your due diligence, you're not the problem, and you've tried your best, might be just time to move on.
And ask some friends. just get some perspective. Sometimes you got to get out of your own head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like perfect ending right there. Just replay that last 15, 20 seconds he said. That was your answer. You can skip the whole 30 minutes, but no, don't do that. But but that last 15 seconds, that was it.
Yep. And it everyone has struggles in the workplace. It's across all careers. You just, like you said, do your due diligence and correctly assess the situation.